In the heart of a bustling fair, where laughter and music drown out the quiet, an old man in a frayed brown coat sits alone, unnoticed by the crowd. Gunner James Holt, his hand steady on a worn wooden cane, carries scars and stories no one bothers to see, until a careless shove sparks a moment that changes everything. When the rumble of engines breaks through the noise, and a band of loyal veterans stands tall for one of their own, you'll feel the weight of unspoken honor and the power of those who never forget. Step into a story where dignity speaks louder than words, and discover why some heroes don't need to shout to be heard. The old man didn't make a fuss. He brushed the dust from his worn coat, steadying himself after the rough push that had sent him stumbling. The crowd at the fair cast fleeting glances his way, their eyes skittering off him like stones across water before they turned back to their lives. The biker, towering and smug, let out a harsh laugh. "Watch your step, Grandpa," he jeered, his voice slicing through the hum of the fair. No one stepped forward. Not yet. But half an hour later, a distant growl rose. The deep, unmistakable rumble of engines. The Veterans Brotherhood Motorcycle Club rolled in, silent as stone. They didn't need words. They parked their bikes in a line, their gazes fixed, heavy with meaning. The bench he settled on was nothing special, just a weathered plank beside a lemonade stand, its splinters smoothed by years of use. Gunner James Holt, Gunny to those who knew him, eased himself down with the care of a man whose body carried more history than strength. He didn't speak, didn't bother to scan the crowd. His knees throbbed from the fall, a dull ache that joined the bruise spreading across his side. But he brushed the dirt from his pants without a grimace. The wind tugged at his faded brown coat, its cuffs frayed, its fabric thin from decades of wear. A patch on the shoulder, once bold, had dulled with time, but up close you could still trace the faint outline of an airborne eagle, its wings spread defiantly. Gunny pulled the coat tighter, his hands settling on the worn cane he carried. Not ornate, just wood polish smoothed by years of quiet reliance. Nearby, a young boy tugged at his mother's sleeve, his voice small but clear. "Mom, that man fell. Shouldn't we help him?" The child's mother, a fairgoer with a distracted frown, hushed him quickly, steering him toward the candy booth with a whispered word. Gunny caught the exchange but didn't react, his expression as still as the horizon he stared toward. A young couple passed by, the woman's face softening with concern. "Someone should do something," she murmured. Her partner shrugged, his voice dismissive. "Probably just some old drunk." They didn't linger, their footsteps fading into the fair's lively pulse, balloons bobbing, laughter rising, music weaving through the air. Around Gunny, an invisible circle of space formed, a quiet void where eyes avoided his and footsteps veered away. He didn't demand their attention, didn't chase their pity. He just sat, gazing past the Ferris wheel to the distant sky, not lost, but anchored in a stillness that held more than the crowd could guess. Beneath that calm, beneath the ache in his bones and the sting of the bruise, was a man who'd walked through fire most couldn't fathom. He didn't need their kindness, but a faint instinct told him his time on this bench was short. Across the fairground, the biker held court, still chuckling over his triumph. Tall and broad, he leaned against his gleaming Harley, his sleeveless vest showing off thick arms, his mirrored sunglasses glinting like armor. "Old man nearly scuffed my boots," he bragged, slapping a friend's shoulder. His buddies snickered, their eyes drifting to a gaggle of teenagers nearby, phones out, capturing the scene. One of the teens zoomed in on Gunny, still alone on the bench. "This is gonna pop off on TikTok," he muttered, fingers flying as he typed a caption. "Gramps takes a spill at the fair." The crowd around them buzzed with murmurs, but no one moved to act. Another couple paused nearby, the woman frowning. "That didn't look like an accident," she said softly. Her boyfriend shook his head. "Not our problem, babe. Let it go." Behind the fried dough stalls, a security guard glanced at the scene, his face tightening. He saw it all, the shove, the fall, the old man's quiet recovery, but he turned away, unwilling to deal with the paperwork. Not today. The biker lit a cigarette, exhaling a plume of smoke as he propped his boots against his bike, sunglasses catching the sun. "If you can't hold your ground, don't get in the way," he said loudly, his voice carrying to anyone nearby. A few fairgoers nodded absently, but most just moved on. One man, though, didn't join the indifference. Standing near the corn dog stall, he watched in silence, his face unreadable. Mac, in his late 50s, wore a leather vest heavy with patches. Operation Desert Storm, Rolling Thunder '07, and across the back, in bold black and gold, Veterans Brotherhood MC, Southern Division. His thick beard and weathered skin spoke of a life lived hard, but his eyes were sharp, taking in every detail. He'd seen enough. Stepping behind the stall, he shielded himself from the fair's clamor and pulled out an old flip phone, battered but functional. He dialed a single number. "Yeah," came the voice on the other end. "It's Mac," he said, his voice low. "It's happening again." A pause, my bone. "Maple Ridge Fairgrounds, center stage." Another pause. "How bad?" Mac's gaze flicked to Gunny, still sitting with his cane, staring out like the world hadn't just knocked him down. Then to the biker, preening like a kid craving attention. "Worse than it looks." The voice didn't ask for more. "On our way." Mac snapped the phone shut, slipped it into his pocket, and leaned against the lemonade booth, his eyes fixed on the man in the brown coat. The fair went on, but something in the air had shifted. At first, the sound was subtle, buried under the fair's lively chaos. Kids whining for cotton candy, teens shrieking on the tilt-a-whirl, a tinny speaker announcing raffle winners. But then it grew, a low, steady rumble that set soda cups trembling on tables. It wasn't thunder, but it carried the weight of a storm. The biker noticed it first, his smirk faltering as he glanced up, sunglasses hiding his unease. "What the hell?" he muttered. Over the hill behind the vendor tents, a single headlight pierced the dusk. Then two, then six. The engines, deep and synchronized, grew louder with each second, rolling closer like a tide. The crowd began to turn, conversations trailing off, heads craning toward the sound. By the time the bikes reached the gravel path along the fair's main strip, the full group was visible. 20 motorcycles, matte black, gleaming with care, each carrying a rider whose face held no trace of a smile. The lead bike bore the same patch as Mac's, but larger, its words clear. "Veterans Brotherhood MC, you never stand alone." They didn't rev their engines or make a show. They just parked, one by one, forming a silent wall of chrome and resolve. The biker's grin was gone. "What is this, some retirement ride?" he scoffed, his voice loud but brittle, cracking at the edges. The lead rider dismounted, pulling off his helmet to reveal gray hair and a scar slicing across his jaw. He didn't spare the biker a glance, walking past him with deliberate calm toward the bench where Gunny sat. The fair fell quiet, a hush rippling through the crowd. Kids stared wide-eyed, vendors froze mid-sail. Even the Ferris wheel seemed to pause, as if the moment carried a weight the whole place could feel. Gunny looked up, his eyes narrowing slightly, a flicker of recognition passing through them. He didn't rise, not yet. The lead rider stopped before him, tugged off his gloves, and gave a single nod. "Been a long time, Gunny," he said, his voice low, meant for the old man alone. Gunny exhaled, a soft sound, and nodded back. The crowd didn't know what to make of it, their whispers fading into the heavy silence. At the edge of the bustling fairground, where the scent of fried dough and cotton candy mingled with the hum of laughter and music, a group of men, most in their 50s or 60s, stood in a quiet, disciplined formation around a weathered park bench. Their presence was a silent force. No words or threats needed, just the weight of their collective resolve. On the bench sat an old man, his faded brown coat adorned with a single airborne eagle patch, his hands now steady, his shoulders subtly squared, as if an invisible burden had been lifted. The man's name was Gunner James Holt, known to those who mattered as Gunny. Something in his posture had shifted, a quiet strength rekindled. The lead rider of the group, a grizzled veteran with silver hair and a jagged scar running across his jaw, stood at attention before him. His eyes held a mix of reverence and relief. "Thought we'd lost you, Gunny," he said, voice low but firm. "Didn't know if you were still out there breathing." Gunny's lips twitched, the faintest hint of a smile breaking through his weathered face. "Some days I wonder that myself," he replied, his voice soft but steady, carrying the weight of years unspoken. A small crowd had gathered, drawn by the quiet intensity of the scene. A few teenagers, phones in hand, filmed the moment, treating it as fleeting content for their feeds, unaware of the gravity unfolding before them. Whispers rippled through the onlookers. "Gunny? Who's Gunny?" one asked. "That old guy who fell earlier?" another murmured, glancing toward the bench. A teenage boy, no older than 15, tugged at his father's sleeve. "Dad, is he someone important?" The father didn't respond. His eyes narrowed, searching his memory as if trying to recall a name from a story told long ago. Mac, a burly man in his late 50s with a thick beard and skin etched by years of sun and wind, stepped forward. He shrugged off his leather vest, revealing a faded t-shirt beneath. The words 3rd Battalion, Firebase Ajax, 1972, printed in cracked ink across his chest. His voice carried clear and strong, cutting through the fairgrounds din. "You ever heard of the man who dragged 9 wounded soldiers out of a burning convoy under mortar fire?" he asked, turning to face the crowd. "Then walked 20 kilometers on a broken leg to get them evac?" The words hung in the air, met with stunned silence. He didn't take a medal, didn't want one. The biker, a tall, broad man in a sleeveless vest and mirrored sunglasses, stood frozen nearby. Earlier, he'd shoved Gunny without a second thought, dismissing him as just another old man in the way. Now his cigarette trembled in his hand, his bravado crumbling under the weight of Mac's words. A younger rider from the Veterans Brotherhood Motorcycle Club strolled past him, casually flicking the cigarette to the ground. No one laid a hand on the biker. They didn't need to. The silent judgment of 20 weathered men, their bikes lined up like sentinels, was enough to pin him in place. Gunny rose from the bench, slow and deliberate, his cane tapping the gravel, but his spine straight as iron. The crowd instinctively parted, not out of fear, but out of a newfound, unspoken respect. His voice, when he spoke, was quiet but resolute. "I didn't come here for trouble," he said, eyes scanning the faces around him. "Just wanted to hear the music. Maybe eat a funnel cake." The lead rider's scarred face softened, a rare smile breaking through. "Then let's get you one, Gunny. On us." As the crowd opened like a parting sea, a small boy stepped forward, the same one who'd seen Gunny stumble earlier and had tugged gently at his coat, worried and curious. "Mister?" the boy asked, his voice small but clear. "Are you really a hero?" Gunny looked down, his eyes kind but heavy with memory. "No, son," he said softly. "I just rode with a few." His name was Gunner James Holt, but back in 1972, in the sweltering jungles around Firebase Ajax, they called him Gunny. Titles then weren't handed out on paper. They were forged in heat, dust, and blood. Their convoy had been ambushed en route to resupply, a brutal assault that left the lead truck engulfed in flames before anyone could react. Shrapnel tore through Gunny's calf as he pulled himself from the rear Humvee, but he didn't hesitate. Through gunfire and screams, through smoke so thick it choked the lungs, he moved. First, he dragged out Private Kinley, both legs gone but still breathing. Then Specialist Duran, a bullet lodged in his vest but alive. 3 more followed, all bloodied, all screaming, all saved by Gunny's relentless will. Then came Lieutenant Briggs, barely conscious, blood seeping from his neck. Gunny hoisted him onto his back, his own boots melted by the wreckage's heat, and carried him barefoot to the tree line. 9 men shielded by 1 soldier with a cracked rifle and a shattered knee. He bound their wounds with strips torn from his own uniform, hid them under brush, and then, as night fell, limped 20 kilometers alone through enemy territory. Guided only by the stars, he reached a signal outpost and collapsed, his body spent but his mission complete. He refused the Purple Heart, turned down the Silver Star, asking only one thing: "Send me home." And they did. But Gunny never spoke of it, not once, not fully, until this moment at the fair, where the truth spilled out like a long-buried river. A gasp rose from the crowd. A man in the back, eyes wide, whispered, "That's the guy my uncle talks about. Lieutenant Briggs. Said a ghost carried him out. Said he never got to say thank you." The biker, pale now, felt the weight of his earlier shove settle on him like cold steel. A younger veteran, the newest of the Brotherhood, turned and met his gaze. "You pushed a man who never pushed anyone," he said, voice low and cutting. "Not even the ones trying to kill him." The biker opened his mouth, but no words came. In the presence of men who'd fought, bled, and buried brothers, there was nothing left to say. The fair, once alive with noise, fell silent. A woman in her 40s, the fair organizer, stepped forward, clutching a clipboard tightly. Her eyes darted between Gunny and the veterans, unsure whether to step in or let the moment breathe. She cleared her throat. "Sir," she said softly, addressing Gunny, "we'd be honored if you'd take the main seat for today's ceremony." Gunny blinked, surprised. "I didn't come here for a ceremony," he said, his voice steady but humble. "I know," she replied, her tone gentle but firm. "But people deserve to know who you are, even if you never ask them to." The biker, still lingering awkwardly by his Harley, mumbled something, an apology perhaps, but no one paid him mind. The veterans' brotherhood didn't touch him. Their silent glances were enough. As Gunny walked toward the main stage, the crowd parted naturally. Children stepped aside, their eyes wide with curiosity. Teenagers lowered their phones, the weight of the moment sinking in. The security guard, who'd seen Gunny's fall earlier but avoided intervening to skip paperwork, now looked down, shame creeping into his expression. At the front row, a plastic folding chair had been replaced with something sturdier, a seat with arms and a cushion. As Gunny approached, a small plaque was being taped to its back, reading, "Reserved for one who stood when others couldn't." He sat slowly, his cane resting across his lap, his eyes scanning the faces before him. Not with judgment, but with the quiet weight of memory. Behind him, the motorcycles remained lined up, engines off, their presence a silent wall of loyalty. Mac leaned in, his voice a whisper meant only for Gunny. "You never had to call us, brother. We always knew where you were." Some men seek recognition, their stories shouted from rooftops. Others, like Gunner James Holt, carry their service quietly, their courage woven into the fabric of their silence. But the world, in its own way, remembers. And on this day, at a fairground filled with fleeting joys, it reminded him he was never forgotten.